Hi everybody, with the weather getting really warm and hopefully it stays warm. I'm a true Oregonian. I always hope that the warm weather stays for the summer. I thought that I would give you some tips on staying cool for yourself and for your kids. I know that it's really important for us to keep our kids cool, because if we don't, they get super cranky and really irritable, and so it can make things more difficult, especially when you're trying to take care of yourself and keep yourself cool. So here's some tips. The first ones are preparing your home. So one of the ways to keep your house cool is to have your windows and doors open when it's cooler out, which that's like the early morning and the evenings. If you are like me and don't feel safe keeping your windows open overnight, then I would suggest opening them when you're awake and it starts to cool down. Get the air flowing through the house, which really you could open a window at one end of the house and then the window at the other end of the house to help push the air flow through faster. And then when you go to bed, close all of your windows down. And then during the day, what you want to do is make sure that your windows and doors are closed, your curtains are closed. You want to make sure that the heat from the sunlight is not getting into your house, so try to block the sunlight from coming in as much as you can during the day. And then another tip is cooking. So if you do need to use the stove or oven, try to plan meals that aren't going to have them on for very long. I do like to make meals, where you throw it in the oven, you leave it for 2 or 3 hours. But in the summer and when it's really warm like this, then I'll make sure that I just don't eat those meals because it's too hot and I don't want to heat up my house. Another tip is if you have any ceiling fans, if they have the reverse switch on them, then use that. Because what that does is you can either have the air blow down on you, or you can have it help suck the air up. And so it's a good idea to help suck the hot air up rather than just pushing it back down towards you. For sleeping, which is really difficult when it's so hot outside and you just toss and turn. And if you're tossing and turning, your kids are probably tossing and turning and not getting enough sleep. And this goes for nap time, it goes for bedtime. So here's our sleeping tips. One of the things that I was raised to do was my mom would give us a washcloth before bed, and she would soak it in cold water and let us use this to lay it on our face, lay it on our stomachs, put it on our arms. Of course, we'd lay there and play with it, but my mom always knew that even though we were playing with it, we would go to bed sooner or later, and probably sooner than if we didn't have the washcloth, because we were at least nice and cool and able to relax. One of the tricks is, as the washcloth starts to warm up because it's on your warm skin or it's in the warm air, if you take the corner of it, my mom taught us to helicopter it, which is a fun thing for the kids to do. So it teaches them how to make it cold again. And then other things you can do if you can't convince your child that a cold, wet washcloth is a good thing to sleep with, is you can put their pajamas or maybe their favorite blanket in the fridge or the freezer for maybe 30 minutes before bedtime. This is also a great tip for yourself. If you're having a hard time cooling off, you can do the same thing. Maybe put your pillowcase in the freezer before you go to bed. Maybe put a t-shirt in the freezer and help cool it down before you go to bed. Another thing, like I mentioned with the hot air rising, if you sleep on a higher raised bed, or there's bunk beds in your house, then maybe get the ones that sleep on those bunk beds down lower. Have them sleep on the floor even, because it's going to be much cooler down there. Another way to stay cool this time of year, of course, is through food and hydration. Number one most important thing, drink water. Lots and lots of water. Another thing that I like to do is cut up fruits and make a fruit salad. Like I'll make a big bowl of fruit salad and I'll stick it in the freezer and just let it sit there, and then I'll spend the rest of the week eating off of that fruit salad. And so it's really nice because it's like a nice little treat. You wind up with like a watermelon popsicle. Other great things to freeze are, well, any melon, I'd say berries, grapes are really good. Just be careful with little ones. Make sure that you're cutting the grapes or that you're peeling the skin on the grapes if you are going to give them to younger ones, or just give them the berries and the melon, and don't worry about giving them grapes. You could keep them all for yourself. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about was cooling activities. So things that you can do that are fun activities. Of course, you can do like a water table. You can get a tub and just put the kids' toys in it and do that with cold water. If you're worried about your floors getting wet, just put a towel under it. One of the things that we did growing up, my brother and I, was my mom would give us spray bottles, which you could get those at Dollar Tree, any other store. You can check the cleaning supplies or the travel section and probably get them for less than $1. But you get the ones that have the, not just the straight stream, but the mist option. And so that it just helps spread the water out and makes it much cooler. If you have a fan in the house, if you stand back a couple feet and spray at the fan, it feels really good. It's nice and cool. It's like, it just spreads it at more of a mist. My mom actually was telling somebody about this a couple months ago, how she would give my brother and I water bottles, not just to keep us cool, but to keep herself cool, because she would sit further behind us. So when we were spraying the fan, then whatever didn't get us would always get her. So she got to stay nice and cool by letting my brother and I play. And then with little ones that maybe can't spray, which that's another great thing about spray bottles, is it helps work hand muscles, which can help work with writing and literacy. But if you have little ones, using the washcloth, the wet washcloth, get them to play peekaboo. So this will help encourage them to put a cold towel on their face and cool off. Or you can do like most of us adults do. You just toss it on their face and then let them pull it off. It's a fun game. It was also always fun for me as a kid, that even though we weren't going swimming, my mom would let us put on our swimsuits and we would take swimsuit showers. And that just helped so my mom could get both my brother and I cooled down at the same time, because we were both in our swimsuits. Or we could get a cold bath with, we did have like floaties, so she would let us take our floaties in the bathtub. But again, if you're worried about having to watch the kids and the time with the cold bath and safety, then just get like a small tub and let them play with that water. Just know that right here is a cooling point, so if they're reaching their hands in the water and their wrists, it's going to help cool them down as well. And then I wanted to talk about going out. I know that COVID is happening, things are still shut down, and those splash pads, swimming pools are probably still all shut down. But if you do go out, if you go wherever you're going, if you go on a road trip, even though try to stay close to home, but some people are still going to go on road trips. One thing we always did as a family for road trips was you bring the cooler, and my mom, to make sure we didn't get cranky on the road trip, she would throw washcloths in the cooler. And again, we would just dip it as the ice would melt. We dip it in the ice water and use that to cool down on the drives. If you're going anywhere, even public transport, try to bring cool water bottles, plenty of water to drink. If you're just playing outside in your yard, then definitely put on sunscreen. Please put on sunscreen. We live in the Northwest. Our skin is not used to the sun, so it's really important that we wear sunscreen. If you don't have sunscreen, I know it can get expensive. If you have hats, wear those. If you have some thin layers of clothes, wear those. Again, you could put that in the fridge or freezer before you go to play outside so that you have that cooling layer, but then you also have the shade from the clothes for your skin. And then for small children and strollers, it is important to try to make sure that they have shade, but it's also important to ensure that there is still air in there. There's still airflow. So just be conscious and think about what you're using to cover your kids' strollers, because you want to make sure that you're not causing an oven reaction in there. And that's another place that you can also throw in one of those water bottles with ice in a sock, because that will help keep their bodies cool in those situations that you're trying to give them shade, but you're trying to keep them cool. And then if you're going out, or even if you're at home, just watch for signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. It's really easy to look up. If you don't know what the signs are, just look it up on the internet. A lot of the things are, if your kid's temperature is high, like just their body temperature's high, that's something to be concerned about. If you're outside playing, and not in a sprinkler or anything that's cool, if you're outside and your kid starts to get goosebumps, but they're in the sun and it's hot, that's something that you need to pay attention to, because it could mean that they're getting dehydrated or just too hot in general. One of the things is, as adults, we have our own signs. Like, we start sweating, we can tell that we don't feel good and everything, but with the kids, they're not going to come up to you and tell you that they don't feel good. They're just going to keep playing and playing and playing. So just be conscious of it and pay attention. Is your kid's skin, if it feels cold and they've been out in the sun, that's a sign. And just the opposite, if their skin starts to feel hot and they've been out in the sun. So just make sure that you're getting them in the shade, that you are keeping them cool, and that you are giving them plenty of liquids to drink. If you are ever concerned and your kid it just doesn't seem to be themselves when they're playing outside, and they seem exhausted more than normal out of nowhere, if you are concerned, please call your healthcare provider and get your kid in some shade, get them water, get them cooled off, use the cold towels. We just want to make sure that everybody's safe and taken care of. But with that, I hope that all of you do enjoy some of the sunshine and do find lots of ways to cool off and keep your kids cool. I hope that everybody is doing well, and go have some fun.